In the previous module, we compared the difference between tech use and tech integration. We also looked into a framework for technology integration, which is the TPAC framework. In this module, we will try to synthesize all this information in order to come up with a vision for technology integration. Let me present to you this vision for technology integration. In a technology-integrated curriculum, what we should be thinking first and foremost is not which technology to use, not which technology tool to use, not which gadget to use, but the learning outcome. When we talk of learning outcomes, we ask the question, what do you want your students to learn? Once this is already very clear to the teacher can now start to think of the technology tools that the teacher could use to integrate into the learning activities and assessment, the choice of which should help the students achieve the learning outcome. This vision for technology integration entails a combination of teachers' content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and technological knowledge. We will focus on these three aspects of learning in the light of technology integration. Let us start with the learning outcomes. Again, the question to ask is, what do you want your students to learn? In your case, what are the usual objectives or purposes in your class? Chances are, these are the standards, competencies, and goals provided by the Department of Education by way of the curriculum guide. Let me read to you some examples of the standards, competencies, objectives, and goals. A sample of a content standard for grade 4 math. Demonstrate understanding of whole numbers up to 100,000. A sample of a performance standard from grade 8 science. Make a poster comparing food choices based on the trophic levels. And a sample competency for grade 7 English. Identify the distinguishing features of proverbs, myths, and legends. Let's say, for instance, you have these standards and competencies and objectives already, and you understood what these are already. Having this in mind, you can now ask the question, how can I integrate technology so that my students will be able to do these competencies and objectives? In short, for example, how can I integrate technology so that my students will be able to make a poster comparing food choices based on the trophic levels? How can I integrate technology so that my students will be able to identify the distinguishing features of proverbs, myths, and legends? After doing that, after the objectives are all very clear and the learning outcomes and the technology tools that can possibly be used, the teacher can start planning technology-integrated learning activities and learning assessment. For learning activities, the question is always, what activities will help your students to learn? For assessment, the question is, how will you know your students have learned? You notice that the discussion of learning activities and assessment is always integrated because that is something that we want to promote. Assessment and instruction are not two different events in the classroom. Instead, they should be intricately linked and intertwined. How do you integrate technology in your learning activities and assessment? I'm sure you have your own strategies, but let me suggest 4 good strategies for technology integration. These strategies put together learning activities and assessment. Here are the strategies. 1. Individual learning. 2. Collaborative learning. 3. Whole class instruction with technology. And 4. Learning at home. Let us start with individual learning. Now, why individual learning? First, it's a highly student-centered activity. Students become active learners as they use a wide range of materials available for them to use. Second, on the part of the teachers, they just become motivators and facilitators in the learning process. And the whole school fosters a climate of active and productive learning. Individual learning is best in a computer lab setup with 1-to-1 ratio of computers. The features of individual learning are usually first, introduction or motivation, followed by learners' interaction with resources or materials, and then it ends usually with processing or synthesis. Let us discuss briefly what you can do in the introduction or motivation part. What do you usually do to introduce a topic or to motivate students in a topic? Chances are you'll ask a question, a thought-provoking question, or you'll have them play games, or maybe you'll have them watch a video. I challenge you to try other strategies, this time strategies to elicit students' prior knowledge and strategies to reveal students' misconceptions of the topic. Here are some examples of graphic organizers that you can use to elicit students' prior knowledge. First, the KWL chart. It consists of 3 columns, namely What I Know column, What I Want to Know column, and What I Learned column. Before the start of the lesson, students may write what they know about the topic and what they want to know about the topic. And then when the lesson is finished, they may summarize what they have learned in the topic. Next graphic organizer is called an IRF chart, which stands for Initial, Revised, and Final chart. It works the same way as the KWL chart. There is just a slight difference. Before the start of the lesson, they will write their ideas in the initial column. In the middle of the lesson, they can write their ideas in the revised column. And at the end of the lesson, they will write their final ideas in the final column. Another graphic organizer is called Anticipation Reaction Guide, or ARG. True-false statements may be given to the students, and they will write whether they agree or disagree, or they think the statements are true or false before and after the lesson. Another strategy that focuses on uncovering prior knowledge or beliefs that may hinder or block further learning is called the misconception preconception check. This is usually used to deal with ideas that are problematic. You give an idea and you have the students choose from among these choices. A. I'm absolutely certain this is true. B. I'm pretty sure it is true. C. I have no idea whether it's true or false. D. I'm pretty sure it is false. Or E. I'm absolutely certain it is false. Of course, you could modify the choices. So those are some examples of graphic organizers that you may use to uncover prior knowledge. What you can do is you upload the document or file so that students may have access to it. Or if you do not want to upload it, you can also have it as an assessment. So you can have it as a quiz that you can also make through Genyo. After the introduction or motivation and the misconceptions and confusions are out of the way, learners can start interacting with the resources that you provided. Now, let me give you some examples of resources that you can give to your learners. First, videos. You can choose from thousands of videos related to your topic in YouTube or Khan Academy. Aside from videos, you may also use some web resources. You can also make use of interactive simulations, some tutorials that are found in Genyo, articles or reading texts. But when you're giving resources to your learners, be sure to always include guide or process questions. Make sure that there is a task, and there could also be a graphic organizers. This will make the students make sense of the material. After the learners have interacted with various resources that you have given, never ever end the session without doing processing or synthesis of the lesson. Here are some suggestions to do processing or synthesis. First, you may together answer the process questions that you have given during the interaction with the resources. Second, you may ask the students to share or report their findings. And third, you may ask the students to answer the charts given at the start of the lesson, like KWL, ARG, and etc. So that's it for individual learning. The second strategy is called collaborative learning. So why collaborative learning? First of all, learning is primarily a social act. And with collaborative learning, students develop teamwork, they develop independent learning strategies, and it also mitigates learner isolation. In a collaborative learning setup, students work together to solve a problem, complete a task, or create a product. This is said to develop the 4 C's of 21st century learning: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity. Now, I will be suggesting 2 strategies for you in relation to collaborative learning. First is problem-based learning, and second is learning centers. Let's start with problem-based learning. In a problem-based learning, students solve an open-ended problem or task. And this is usually corresponding to authentic activities or tasks. Authentic activities or tasks reflect the kind of activities that people do in the real world. That's the problem with many classroom activities. They are so structured, they fail to account for the nature of real-world problem solving. So if you have students do an authentic task, an open-ended problem or task, you'll have them experience the real world in all its complexity, messiness, and uncertainty. For example, you're talking about the history of Cambodia. Instead of just presenting the history of Cambodia sequentially and through PowerPoint, why don't you ask the students to plan a trip to Cambodia? You can make the specifications like, make this a historical trip to Cambodia. There are also some graphic organizers that you can use in problem-based learning. Here is a problem solution chart or this cooperative learning self-evaluation. You may also set up what we call learning centers or interest centers. You can make use of the various computer workstations or laptops in your classroom and designate them as Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, Station 4, and Station 5. And you can assign tasks for those stations. Or you can be more creative and rename the stations into Game Center, Viewing Center, Tutorial Center, Vote Center, and Quiz Center. The possibilities are endless for collaborative learning. The third strategy is whole class instruction with technology. We cannot completely do away with whole class instruction, the good old lecture type of instruction, but with technology we can definitely do it with a twist. So what am I saying? With whole class instruction with the use of technology, classes become interactive, students are more engaged and motivated. How can we do that? Let's say in the middle of the discussion, you try to break and have a survey. And with the students using their smartphones or tablets, they can answer the survey. Another strategy may be flashcard. When discussions are getting boring, you can give the students a flashcard and have them answer the question found in the flashcard. Or you can always play a game, or have a forum, or let them take a quiz. The fourth and last strategy is learning at home. So why bring learning at home? There are many reasons. First, some students would want to do advanced reading. Second, for enrichment or for review. Or when students cannot attend classes. This is a common problem in the Philippines when classes are suspended because of typhoons and other disasters. Or some students may have taken a vacation abroad. Learning need not stop because of these class suspensions. We can continue to bring learning at home. So what are some of the things that we can do? We could assign lesson to them in the assignment feature of Genyo. We could provide support resources or materials. Or we can always try a strategy called the flip classroom. You see, in the traditional classroom, the teacher's role is a sage on the stage. He will give a lecture today and there will be homework tonight. But in a flip classroom, the teacher's role is a guide on the side. what happens in the classroom is that there are activities, and what happens tonight will be the watching of the lecture. So that's why it's called flip. Activity today, lecture online tonight. So you can also make use of Genyo to upload these video lectures. So those are some of the strategies for learning at home. Just a review, we discussed 4 strategies for learning activities and assessment: individual learning, collaborative learning, whole class instruction with technology, and learning at home. Before we end this module, let us have a review of the vision for technology integration. We start with learning outcomes. What do we want our students to learn? And this usually takes the form of standards, competencies, and goals. After we have planned the learning outcomes, we can now begin to think of technology-integrated learning activities and assessment. And for this, we looked into 4 strategies: individual learning, collaborative learning, whole class learning, and learning at home. I'll leave you with these questions to ask yourself when integrating technology in the lesson. First, are the learning outcomes specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic? Second, are the learners informed of the expected learning outcome? Are the assessments and learning activities appropriate and adequate for students to achieve the learning outcomes? Is there rich learner interaction with technology? Is there innovative and creative use of technology in the learning activities? And finally, is the integration essential to achieve the learning outcome?